In terms of what we're going to cover this evening, I'm going to give a short introduction on the work of the DMU, and then we'll have a panel discussion where we'll talk to some of our current DMU colleagues to share a little bit about their roles and the work that they do. And then Sabrina, a colleague from our recruitment team, will give a short overview of the recruitment process. And we hope to finish with a Q&A of at least 15 minutes or so at the end where we can take people's questions. We'll be taking those off of the chat. So if you do have questions throughout, please feel free to put them into the chat or vote for questions with the thumbs up for questions that you particularly would like to see addressed. So without further ado, we'll get on with things, and we'll start with the CMA's Digital Markets Unit and some of our work. Matthew, if we could just go to the slide. That's just the agenda, which we've talked about, and so we'll get straight in. So I guess the first point to make is it's a very exciting time to join the team. We're very excited about the work that we're doing. If we look at this slide here, you can see on the left-hand side, we're talking about some of the work that we do. For instance, online reviews and subscription traps. These are issues that really matter to people, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You can see the UK's digital markets regime. We've appointed a number of digital experts, and one of the great things about working in the DMU is you do genuinely get the opportunity to work with some world-renowned experts in their fields, and some of the people on the panel tonight have had that opportunity. In the middle is a copy of our foundation model initial report, which was recently released. And again, people in this group have been working on some of that AI work. This is really working on some of the biggest and most important technological changes facing our society, and we're really at the cutting edge of that. So I think it's a very exciting time. Top right-hand corner, this is from a blog post about some work that we're doing with Google and the ICO about the way that they treat cookies. And it's really about competition and privacy and the interaction of those two things. And so again, if you join the DMU, you have the opportunity to really make a difference to how technology gets rolled out, not just in the UK, but actually worldwide in that case. And again, I think Matthew will be talking a little bit about some of the work that he's been doing on that. And finally, the cloud market, I'm personally involved in this one. It's a really big and important market, which is relied upon by literally thousands of UK businesses every day in the way that they organize themselves, in the way that they run their business. And so, it's another example, really, of how the Digital Markets Unit work really impacts day-to-day life, both for consumers and for UK businesses. If we go over the page, here's just a bit more detail, if you like, on some of the work that we're doing at the moment. So again, top left-hand corner, we're preparing for the pro-competition regime. This is known as the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Bill. It's currently in front of Parliament. It's going through that process. You may have read about it in the newspapers, quite a lot going on there. And we're doing a lot of work on giving advice to government, really in shaping how that bill takes shape and really how it operates. The middle there, the green box, you can see we're constantly thinking about these markets. They're very dynamic. They move very quickly, and so we need to really make sure that we really understand the markets that we're working with and improving our knowledge base. We don't do all of this work alone. So in the top right, we work with a number of other regulators and stakeholders, both in the UK, through things like the Digital Regulation Cooperation Forum, which is a grouping of the CMA together with the ICO, Ofcom, and the FCA. But also with other expert bodies, academics, and international regulators, both in Europe, the US, and further afield. In terms of what we're doing day to day to get ready for the new regime, well, a lot of that is our organizational and institutional setup. It's about making sure that we build a team that is got the right skills, the right talent, in order to exercise the new powers that are to be given to us under the bill, and make sure actually that we've got a diverse and inclusive and very supportive team that represents the diversity of the UK population as a whole. In addition to preparing for the new powers, we're also really involved in tackling issues in digital markets with CMA's existing tools, which include obviously the Competition Act and the markets regime and the existing powers. So you'll also hear from some of our speakers this evening about some of the work that they've done on some of those cases. So we do also casework in those areas. If we move on to the slide. You may already know this if you have looked at either the adverts that have gone out or others, but what we're really in this round of recruitment, we're recruiting new roles, 4 roles, 2 principal digital market advisors and 2 digital markets advisors for our Manchester office. Now, Manchester is our digital hub and one of our sort of key areas. We really want to build our presence in that office. You will hear again from some of the people this evening who are already working in our Manchester office and about some of the work that they're doing. On the right-hand side, you can see some quotes from current DMU and wider CMA colleagues about the work that they do. And I really think that what comes out here is it's a great opportunity to do really meaningful work that makes a real difference to the way that digital markets operate. And we know how important they are to people and to the wider economy. And also, it's a really great place to grow your career, to grow your skills, because, as I said before, you will have the opportunity to work with really some of the very best minds, not just within the CMA, but also in those other regulators, academics, and across the world, because we really are at the very cutting edge of some of these issues. Applications in this round close just before midnight on Monday, the 6th of November, a week from today. So please do, if you're interested, make sure that you get that application in. That is a very hard deadline, but we look forward to talking to you about that. So that's a bit of a canter through from me, just to give a little bit of a sense of some of the things that we're doing. I'm going to hand over now to the panel to talk a little bit about some of the work that they've done in a bit more detail. And then, of course, we can always pick some of these questions or some of these issues up in our discussion in Q&A. So, Bluebell, I think we're going to start with you, and perhaps you could talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done.
Sure. Thank you, Matthew. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I thought first I could tell you a little bit about my background and then my journey into the work I'm doing now at the CMA. So I actually studied physics at undergrad in Manchester, which I really enjoyed. So after university, went into the kind of physics research area, was developing technology for kind of different purposes, but became really interested in how I can actually be more impactful and how I could make sure society delivers benefits for all of society, how technology delivers benefits for all of society. And when I learned about the Digital Markets Unit and the work we're doing towards that, it just seemed like a great place to kind of have that really impactful job, bring my knowledge about technology into it, and make sure that technology is really benefiting people, businesses, and the whole economy. So I think I've been able to apply some of my kind of skills from before. So as a researcher, I was working on kind of looking to the future, being a bit analytical with my work. I think that's something I've definitely had the opportunity to do at the CMA and in the digital markets unit. And currently I'm working on that AI piece of work that Matthew showed before, so around foundational models and ensuring that we understand how that market's working and that it delivers for consumers and such in the future. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. I think I can hand over to Aaron now. I'm happy to take any questions on anything I said earlier and later in the Q&A.
Sure, thanks very much, Bluebell. So hi everyone, I'm Aaron. I'm an assistant director working within the DMU. I guess again, by way of my background, so I'm a law graduate, and most of my previous roles have been very much in the competition law space. So prior to joining the CMA, I was a barrister specialising in competition law. And before that, I was an academic, again, very much in the competition law space. And so my reason for joining the DMU was that I had a particular interest in how competition law worked in digital markets. So this felt like the perfect role for me. In terms of what I do within the DMU, so I work as part of our legislation and policy team. So we work, as Matthew mentioned earlier, to support and advise government on establishing the new pro-competition regime for digital markets. So my day-to-day role entails working with colleagues across the CMA. That includes lawyers, economists, and data specialists. And we provide key insights to government to inform decisions about the shape of the regime. And that work very much builds upon the advice we already provided to government and we published, which was called the Digital Markets Task Force Report. And then alongside that, I'm also involved in some of the work we're doing to develop guidance on how the CMA will approach overseeing the regime. So that's me. I think I'm then handing over to Jess.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and hi to everybody who's joined us tonight. I'm actually speaking to you from the Manchester office. I've only been here for 8 weeks, so I thought it'd be great to come and speak to you all about what it's been like sort of joining. My background, I actually also have a master's degree in physics, like Bluebell, and then following that, I actually went into a graduate training programme with British Airways, so doing a lot of project management work. Then I had a complete career change into teaching, which I did for quite a while. And I've now done another career change into the DMU, and I really feel like I've used my transferable skills. And when I applied for this role, that's what they were looking at, those transferable skills that I brought from teaching and my previous role. So obviously I haven't had direct experience in the digital markets, but they can see the potential in me, so that's been great. So my current title is a digital markets project officer. So, and I would say no 2 days are the same. I'm involved in lots and lots of different projects. I've currently been setting up the DMU support team because we're growing hugely, and there's a big group of us now at Manchester. Been setting up the support team and using my training skills to help establish that. I've been working with some of the digital experts that have been contracted to work with the CMA, and doing a lot of work with resource management and working in the best place where people need to go. So that's me really quickly. So I want to now hand over to Matthew.
Great, thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So I'm the other Matthew in the team, Matthew Alsop. I joined 18 months ago as a digital markets advisor and was recently promoted to senior digital markets advisor. Before joining, I actually studied computer science at university and then went on to work at Deloitte in sort of risk and compliance for around 18 months, 2 years. But similar to Bluebell, really wanted to think about how I could apply that tech background into something like really impactful for society and kind of allow me to sit around and think about tech all day, basically. And that's exactly what I've got to do since joining. So I've spent a lot of time working on our Privacy Sandbox case. So this is one you'll probably have heard of, but might not know the detail. Basically, Google plans to remove third-party cookies from Chrome and replace it with a more privacy-preserving version of that technology to allow kind of ad targeting on the web. My role on that project has been around industry engagement. So how do we make sure we're speaking to people that are going to be affected by this change, publishers, advertisers, to make sure that Google designs it in a way that works for everyone and doesn't benefit themselves. So a day-to-day job for me might be thinking about our strategy, who do we want to speak to, preparing briefings for meetings, and then presenting and sometimes chairing those meetings with external people in industry. And then more recently, I've started to think about how our work on Privacy Sandbox impacts our kind of wider view as we start to set up the DMU as the bill works its way through Parliament. So I will hand back to Matthew at that point.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Just a bit of a thought as a result of those comments. I mean, obviously, people are coming from lots of different backgrounds there, as you sort of mentioned, and it'd be really useful to understand, you know, what have people's experiences been with sort of learning and development opportunities? How have you found the the change moving from one set of things into a new area? I don't know if anyone wants to kind of pick that up, particularly about learning and development.
Yeah, I can go first.
Yeah.
I think that was really important for me. I was changing career quite a bit. So even though I had a bit of a tech background, I didn't have the kind of competition law background that Aaron has, or some economics backgrounds that other people have. And definitely, is it needed? As Jess said, it's about seeing kind of where your potential is and where your interest is when joining the DMU. But I have found that there's lots of different ways to kind of skill up in the areas you're interested in. And I'd say for me, there's been 3 core ways that I've done that. So there's through the CMA's own learning and development programs, where they will run specific courses on, for example, competition law or competition economics. You can sign up to attend those. There's kind of longer ones and shorter ones. And so that's been really useful for me. Then there's the opportunity to do courses outside of the CMA. So there's kind of funding that the CMA has, and I was able to do a course run by the University of Cambridge that was about kind of policy making and decision making in that space. It was a 6-week course I did over summer, really enjoyed that, and learnt a lot from it. I feel I can now apply in the role. And then the third, which I think is really important, is kind of on the job learning. And I think the key way I've been able to do that is when I joined the CMA, I actually, even though I was in the digital markets unit, which is looking towards kind of this new legislation and the new powers we're going to have, I was able to work on 2 of our existing antitrust cases, where we're investigating practices by Apple and Google. And so I worked in those teams with some lawyers, economists, and others from across the CMA, using those kind of existing CMA tools. And I feel like that's where that on-the-job experience of how do you apply these principles. So the courses I'd done, for example, in those areas, I could really see them in action. I think that's been a big personal success for me, applying course-based work to practical side of things. So yeah, I feel like I've had loads of opportunities to develop, which has been great. I don't know if anyone else has got kind of similar additional experiences.
I guess I can quickly add from kind of a how's it been moving here versus previous jobs. I think the DMU is a really great place to be as kind of a junior person or kind of near the beginning of your career. There's been a really big focus on development, some of the L&D opportunities Bluebell's talked about, but also just that opportunity to attend quite high profile meetings and kind of really be involved in kind of high level thinking and decision making. Like I've never felt excluded based on grade. And like it's the kind of place where if you identify an issue or an area that needs thinking about, you really can kind of put your hand up and take that away and do that thinking. And I think just generally there's a really supportive and friendly culture, and a lot of really interesting people who come from quite a range of backgrounds, not just people who've traditionally been at the CMA.
Fantastic. Excellent. That's been great, guys. So why don't we hand over at this point to Sabrina, who's going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of the recruitment process and what you need to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our session. So to start off with, I will talk to you about our recruitment process. So we use the success profile recruitment framework in line with the rest of the civil service. And the elements that we will use in this recruitment process are behaviours and experience, and in more detail can be viewed in the candidate pack. So you may have seen the candidate pack already. So starting with the application process, much of this again is set out in the candidate pack. But some of the key things to note are that you will be required to make applications via civil service jobs. If you've not used civil service jobs before, you will need to create an account. Obviously, if it's your first application, we recommend you follow the instructions in making your application, and you will be required to include your employment history and a personal statement. All applications are anonymised, and you will get prompts when completing your application via civil service jobs. So talking about the personal statement, you will need to review each essential criteria outlined in the role profile. You will need to evidence how well you meet each criteria in a personal statement, and you can also label which criteria you are answering, so it just sort of breaks that down a bit for you. At the sifting stage, you will be assessed and scored against the skills, experience and knowledge you have demonstrated against the essential criteria. So it's really important that you allow yourself enough time to prepare your application. So looking at some useful documents. So within the candidate pack, there is a guide called Additional Tips and Information, which includes further information about the recruitment process and tips for making your application. You may find it helpful to use a STAR technique. So this is essentially the situation, the task, action and result. Again, this will be included in your personal statement, providing specific examples on how you previously sort of demonstrated each criteria that you'll be being assessed against. This means explaining the situation, the task you had to do, what the action was that you took, and what the result was. Generally, we're more interested in the action and the result part, so try to focus on that. And also don't forget to talk about what you did rather than saying we. We suggest you structure your personal statement clearly by using separate paragraphs for each essential criteria. Those successful at the SIF stage will be invited to attend an interview and undertake an assessment. All of this will be assessed by CMA staff, and the successful candidates will hear from us shortly after. Obviously, there's more information about behaviours you'll be assessed against in the candidate pack with various helpful links for you to read over. If you do think of any specific questions, you can always message us at recruitment at cma.gov.uk, and if you put the job reference in the subject line, one of the team will get back to you promptly. Again, if you have any additional requirements, you can complete that within your application pack, and we will be there to sort of support you. Thank you.
Fantastic, excellent. Thank you, Sabrina. So just picking up on a couple of the questions that I can see already coming up in the chat. One is, so are applications required to be made under civil service jobs? I think the answer to that is yes. That is the process by which you need to put applications in. And as Sabrina has mentioned, we've tried to put a lot of information into that candidate pack in order to help candidates really work their way through that process. I would recommend very strongly that you make the time to really read and absorb that information. It is true that the process is slightly different as a result of being a central government process, but that's why it's important to do that, and use the information that's provided in the candidate packs. But also, Sabrina, you said that if people have got particular concerns either about reasonable adjustments or about any other questions about the process, that they should get in contact via the email. Is that right?
That's right, yes. Yeah. And I think someone's just put that in the chat as well, the email address.
Excellent. So we'll make sure that is in the address. There have also been some questions about diversity and also about internship. I thought maybe I'll pick up a couple of those. We have in the past run a summer internship, and we are currently looking at whether or not to run another one. I think we're very positive about the experience there. And as I say, in relation to diversity and inclusion, I think we feel that we have got, we've made some very good strides there. Our overall objective is to ensure that our diversity represents the UK population as a whole, because of course that is who we serve, really. And so I think we can make further strides there, but we're well on our way. In terms of other questions, there's been another question, which is, what sort of baseline level of knowledge required? Do you have to have a tech background? And I think maybe Jess, if you want to talk a little bit about that first, and maybe others can come in. I think we are looking for transferable skills, as Jess described before, not necessarily always tech knowledge.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Yeah, so obviously I was a teacher previously, and I was managing the computing curriculum. So obviously I have got a bit of digital experience from that, but I'm certainly not. I've not come from law. I've not come from like a corporation like other people have. So they really are just looking for, have you got those transferable skills? And it is really looking for that potential, because it's ever changing, this role, the digital market. Getting ourselves ready for day one. I'm finding this every week. There's new things coming up all the time. So I think just being somebody who's really flexible and really adaptable, and that's more, I think, what they're looking for. And they want that diversity. They want that breadth of skill set, really. So I would really just look through, that essential criteria and those personal skills, and really think, have I got what that takes, and can they see the potential? Because that's what I feel like how I got in, that they looked at that potential and those transferable skills. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything else to that.
Okay. There are questions about the Manchester office itself. We are planning to, we're in the process of moving into a brand new purpose-made, fantastic new building in Manchester. That's going to be sometime early in the new year. So it is fair to say that we're a little bit chopping and changing at the moment, but that is a, that's a temporary situation. But we have very strong plans to grow in Manchester. This outreach is certainly part of that. And we are investing in quite a lot of office space, dedicated office space, IT space, etc., to make sure that Manchester is really top notch in terms of attracting and having our people work there. Sabrina, I don't know if others want to talk a little bit about that, but Sabrina, I know that you've recently sort of started bringing people into Manchester.
Yes, that's right. So obviously we are currently growing in Manchester, and at the moment we are based on Marble Street. So and it is that obviously you do book a desk if you want to be in the office, and as I say, we are sort of currently growing, and I think the long-term goal, as Matthew said, is to move into 1 New Bailey, so that will be sort of early in the new year.
Fantastic. There have been other questions about the London office and other offices. So just to quickly address that, we do have people working throughout the CMA offices, not just in London and Manchester, but we've also got offices in Belfast, in Cardiff, and in Edinburgh. There may be opportunities in those offices as well. We'll put in the chat a link to a Microsoft form, which is effectively an opportunity for people to express longer term interest in the DMU. It allows us to come out and give you notifications when we've got new news to share, etc. But it is fair to say that this recruitment round, which is the one that we're really focused on at the moment, is really about building that hub in Manchester, because we're really dedicated and dedicated to add to the colleagues that we've already got working brilliantly there, and make sure that that really thrives. So we'll put that in the chat. Other questions. There have been a couple of questions about again opportunities for advancement within the DMU. Bluebell, Matthew, you've both, I think, recently had promotions within DMU. Do you want to talk perhaps a little bit about how coming in at one level and then being able to progress from that to another level within the opportunities that you've been given?
Yeah, I'm happy to start, and then Bluebell can come in. I guess it happened relatively naturally for me. So I guess taking you back to the Privacy Sandbox work I was involved in, when I started out, perhaps had sort of less experience presenting, particularly to kind of externals. So, maybe I sort of edged my way in and kind of present one or two slides to them, answer a couple of questions, but certainly wasn't leading those calls. And then as I've grown in confidence, I'm now at the point where I will tend to chair those calls. That might be a bilateral or a roundtable with a range of different people in industry. So even in that kind of one specific area, my responsibilities have shifted as I've kind of grown in confidence and experience. And then you can kind of naturally, when promotion opportunities come up, you're able to point to those sort of that growth in experience. I don't know, Bluebell, you wanted to add anything to that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I saw one of the questions in the chat as well about the kind of roles and responsibilities, which Anna has helpfully posted a link to the full role description. But I might talk about kind of the roles outlined there and how kind of developing those, I feel like, put me on the path to promotion. So I started as a digital markets advisor 18 months ago, which is one of the roles we're advertising for now. And I was recently promoted to principal digital markets advisor, which is another one of the roles we're advertising for now. And in the digital markets advisor description, it talks about the selection criteria being kind of good administrative and organizational skills, experience building effective relationships, experience collating and analyzing information, and good written and verbal communication skills. So when I started, I'd been able to demonstrate that I had those things, and that meant on the administrative and organizational side, being able to kind of set up teams and meetings and kind of record the work I was doing and the work of my teams, and beyond that, the ability to kind of build new teams, work with very different people from across the CMA and to tackle different issues. And then on the analytical side, if there were particular problems we were looking at, or in horizon scanning work, looking at kind of emerging technologies, it was able to kind of read information online, do some research and summarize that for others. And then this final selection criteria around good and written verbal communication is that point there about kind of writing up this information and maybe presenting it to your team. And so that's what I was doing when I joined. And I feel like, very much as Matthew said, by speaking with my line manager and my work manager and then kind of the mentors across the CMA that I kind of ended up having, I felt like I was able to explain what I was interested in doing more of and just explain my ambitions about going for a promotion. And they were really supportive with giving me those additional pieces of work that would allow me to show that I couldn't just kind of write something that I would share with my team and present it to them, but actually I could kind of present something to a much bigger audience or lead a call with some interesting external stakeholders, or propose an entirely new piece of work, a new work stream we should look at based on some research I'd done, and kind of take that forward. And I think it was definitely through kind of the support of those around me that I was able to have those opportunities and then succeed in them, and then explain how I'd done that in essentially the promotion interview. And so yeah, it was a really good experience, somewhat natural, as Matthew said, but also kind of acknowledging there was definitely a lot of support and helping me get there, which I think's something that's really, really good about the team and the CMA more widely.
Fantastic, excellent. Yeah, so that is, I think Matthew and Bluebell have put it really well there. Hopefully it's clear also in the documentation the difference between the two roles, but it really is that thing about being a team member versus potentially taking a bit more of a leading role, bigger role, more outward facing, possibly with larger groups or with external stakeholders, etc. We've got a sort of specific one here, which we might have to take offline with the recruitment team, but in terms of the application process, once the button is pressed, is there a way to make amendments, or if people are concerned about what they've submitted, should they get in touch to make any adjustments if they want to adjust something that they've already submitted? Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to advise if they email recruitment@cma.gov.uk on that specifically, and then we can address that.
Fantastic, excellent. There's also a question about the start dates for successful candidates. So we've got the expectation is that we would like to be making go through the interview process and be making offers this side of the festive break. And so offers would go out then. There's then a little bit of paperwork in terms of security checks, etc., and making sure that people have the right to work in the UK. All of those details are in the candidate pack. But we're really looking for people to start as soon as possible after those processes are gone through. So we could imagine people starting as early as February. But equally, we recognise that some people may have notice periods or may have other reasons to, things that they need to deal with, and that would be a conversation that you would typically have, after offers are made. Aaron, I just wanted to come to you for a moment because you've worked now in the DMU, both in London and in Manchester, and have, I think, relocated. Do you want to just talk a little bit about kind of what that was like going to a new office, something that we're really sort of starting up and building in Manchester?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And so I relocated back in April for mainly family reasons, as my wife and I have recently had a child. And so we were moving to be closer to family. In terms of how the relocation process worked, the CMA is fantastic in providing support. And so it was really seamless. It was almost a case of I left the London office on a Friday, I took a week to move, and then I turned up in the Manchester office on the following Monday. So the whole process was extremely straightforward. And the Manchester office is great. As others have mentioned, it's very much a growing presence. And one of the really wonderful things about it at the moment is new colleagues are joining almost on a weekly basis. So there's a new face almost weekly, and it's great to meet all of the new people joining the office. And there's a real community feel because we've started from being quite a small contingent. And as we've grown, it's got very much a community feel to it. So the office is really well equipped. It's in a great location and it's staffed by great people.
Excellent, fantastic. And just to come back to you for a moment, and maybe other people can also come in. I mean, I mentioned that we have got colleagues working in Edinburgh, in Belfast, in other places, and of course we're working not just with DMU colleagues but with CMA colleagues, across all of those things. What has your experience been working sort of remotely and in a hybrid way across those teams?
Yeah, thank you. So I have young children myself, and so I do a lot of hybrid working, and it's been great to have that flexibility to be able to come into the office sometimes, but do a lot of work from home, and I can work that around sort of my childcare. I have also been down to the London office a couple of times, and it's very much encouraged to try, if you can do, to mix between the other offices. And I'm planning to go to Edinburgh next month, so it's really nice to because I work with so many people across all the teams. It's quite nice to go and visit people, and it's great. We work online, and the IT is fantastic. We can work collaboratively, but there is something nice about meeting people in person, building those relationships. So it's great to have those opportunities to go and work with other people. But I just love, that's one of the appeals. Also, I mentioned before, I'm an ex-teacher, and there really isn't any hybrid working at all. So it's really nice to be able to come to a job where there's a lot of flexibility for that. And if you have families or other responsibilities, it's great to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that hybrid is very well established within the CMA, even for very significant and very senior meetings. It's very common to have a mix of people in the room and online. I also think that the meeting etiquette in the CMA is particularly good. People do use the little hand in order to put that up, etc. And I think that as a result of that, it means that you can feel able to contribute very actively to discussions, whether you're online or in the physical place where perhaps other people are. So I think that has worked extremely well. We've got a couple of questions about that. Travel, as Jess said, people are encouraged to travel between the CMA offices where there's a good business reason to do so. We try to be very efficient about that. So set up a series of meetings, go and do more than one thing. International travel can be available, kind of depends on what you're working on, and again, it's sort of based on business need. There will be sometimes people will be going to Europe, Brussels in particular. Sometimes people go out to the States, accompanying some of our senior execs. That does happen, but we take a very much kind of proportionate approach to that and try to just be really efficient and make sure that we're doing it appropriately. Days in the office, we have a 40% minimum requirement in the office, which is if you're full-time, 2 days out of 5 minimum. We do encourage people to come in a little bit more than that if they can, because obviously it can be very helpful learning and teaching other team members, but that's our sort of approach. The DMU team currently is about 65 or so in the actual core DMU that we have got working. But one of the great advantages of being in the DMU is that you work with colleagues from throughout the CMA. So Aaron or Bluebell or Matthew or Jess will all be working with lawyers and economists and people from business, finance and strategy backgrounds from other teams. And so we're not at all a kind of siloed group. Working parents, excellent. Aaron or Jess, perhaps I could pass one of those on to one of you.
I'm happy to kick off, and then Jess can equally add as well. So I'm a relatively new parent, as I've just mentioned, and the CMA as an organisation has been wonderful in supporting kind of getting started and getting set up as a new parent. So we have an excellent parental leave policy. So I took some time off to be with my family shortly after our daughter was born. And the whole DMU as a team has been wonderfully supportive of the change as we've done that. But also the CMA more generally is excellent at providing support for flexible working patterns. And so I've changed my working pattern following the birth of our daughter, so I can spend a little bit more time with my family. And the CMA were wonderfully supportive, and there was no question about being able to do that. I don't know, Jess, if you've got anything else to add.
So my children are 7 and 4, so they're both at school. So it's great having that flexibility and I tend to work from home. I go into the office 1 day a week and I work from home a lot more. And again, like Aaron said, they've been very supportive of, adapting what kind of works for you and what benefits sort of your sort of home life as well. But it's been great. I can then work around, school drop-offs, pickups, and I think as long as you're meeting your work requirements and the hours, they're very flexible on how you sort of fit that around. I'm not going to lie, being a working parent, there's a lot of juggling going on, but they've been great so far in trying to help me sort of balance that.
Yeah, fantastic. It's fair to say that a pretty significant portion of people within the DMU work those flexible working patterns that Aaron described. So, sometimes that might be 9 longer days out of 10. So for instance, effectively having 1 day free every 2 weeks, but making up the hours by working longer on other days. Some people are working 80%, and they're making that up with 1 morning here or an afternoon there. Again, that's something that we're open to discussing with successful candidates. We do have one question here, which is the differences between working for the CMA and working directly in central government. I think that's a tricky one to answer in any very specific way, except we are a independent, non-ministerial department, so we are within the civil service in terms of the general rights, the salaries, the pension, all of that sort of stuff, and the general working patterns. But it's pretty clear that the CMA is now, very well established and very well respected around the world. And as a result, we are perhaps a little bit more technocratic than ministerial departments, in the sense that, what we do is established by law, and we really stick to going through and as people were saying, making sure that digital markets work well for consumers, for businesses, and for the UK economy is our raison d'etre, as it were. So I think I'm just quickly checking. Question about the Manchester office in the Salford development. I think that's right.
It is, yes.
Exactly. Excellent. So we've got that. Parents, part-time roles. I think we've talked about that. So yes, part-time is something that we would be willing to talk to candidates about, but again, probably a bit later in the process. Bear with me, just coming through. The initial training onboarding period, will you get put into a specific team? We will talk to you about your your interests and what you're particularly interested in working on. And then against that, we have to kind of balance that with business need, if you like. So quite a number of our people, I would say, split their time between 2 or possibly 3 projects. We try not to split people too many more ways than that, but quite often people will be splitting their time half and half between 2 significant projects. And then the other thing I would say is because digital markets are evolving and because the team is growing so rapidly, actually even that can change. So if you're on something, you may find that you're on it for 6 to 9 months, and then if you're really looking for an opportunity to get involved in something else, then discussions with your line manager, quite often we can facilitate that, and we can do that because I think Bluebell made the point that there's plenty to do, and so if you put your hand up and say that you can see something that needs doing, then there's that opportunity. Bluebell, I don't know if you wanted to come in on that point or a different one.
I was just going to say something I wanted to mention earlier and forgot, was the really exciting learning and development programme that is being put together at the moment specifically for the digital markets unit. So we have CMA-wide learning and development programmes. I mentioned some of these courses I'd been doing in kind of competition law and such, but because there's all of these kind of exciting new areas and responsibilities that the DMU has, the team have actually pulled together a really bespoke learning and development program that will aim to kind of train people up, whether it's in kind of more digital areas or project management type areas, so that they can kind of get the skills and the know-how they need for their specific role. So that will apply to kind of any new joiner as well as people currently in the team, which is why I'm excited about it. Yeah, so I just thought I'd mention that too.
Fantastic. And Bluebell, I think you've also had experience of the point I was making earlier about, if you like, you know, being on one project and then being able to kind of move over time, you know, between projects. You in the 18 months or so, I would say that you've been involved in quite a number of different things.
Yeah, it's been really good. Kind of as it all fits together at the end of the day. Like we're looking at digital markets as a whole and how to kind of improve those through the new legislation. But there's kind of a range of projects I've managed to work on. So I mentioned earlier the existing cases we have into Google and Apple, but then that was like using current tools. So I was like, oh, how can I look more into the future, which is now how I'm getting to work on the AI project. And I think that within all of that change, there's always been a kind of conversation I've managed to have either with my manager or with the director around kind of my interests, but also the skills I want to develop. So that move from being a digital markets advisor to a principal digital markets advisor came with some new line management responsibilities for me. So managing others, and so making sure I was getting the right kind of training and experience when I was moving between kind of roles and projects was really important, and that was something that I definitely felt supported in doing, which was really great.
Fantastic, excellent. There have been a couple of questions about internal candidates who are already at the CMA. The answer is yes. Internal candidates are absolutely are eligible, as well as external candidates. And there's also a question about following up that learning and development question. Is it internal training or industry recognized qualifications as well? The CMA more broadly does offer and sponsor sometimes external qualifications, and a number of CMA colleagues have availed themselves of that. It needs to be based on business need, and so there is a process to go through, but there is that. In terms of the L&D that we're thinking about for digital markets, it is going to be very specialized, kind of internal training, if you like, rather than just something out there that's being done by external providers. To be honest, because we think that actually we've probably really got the knowledge either inside the organization and some of the senior people that we've got, or indeed we've talked about, for instance, the digital experts that we're working with, and their information is available on the gov.uk website. You'll see that they are 9 world-renowned experts. So I think that with that and the CMA's credibility, we have the ability to really offer some cutting-edge training in that area. Okay, I think we've covered most things. I'm just trying to quickly check, but if there are additional questions that we haven't managed to cover in this session, just to say again, if you want to email that recruitment@cma.gov.uk email, either the recruitment team can come back to you, or they'll check in if there are particular questions that DMU colleagues can answer, and we will do our very best to respond there. Chris, you're on mute. Still.
Our offices and
There we go.
programs.
Sorry, please.
Does that work?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
all good now. Sorry.
So I was just saying, coming in, there's one on the chat, certainly received a like. on the offices and whether they have a prayer room. Maybe we can comment from a London perspective, Matthew.
Yes, and the Manchester offices, I'm not sure because they are still being fitted out, but my expectation is yes. So we'll check that, but I believe so.
The new office, there's going to be
Yeah.
reflection rooms and mothers' rooms that are being built into those. So I'm sure they're going to think about that and make sure that's covered as well.
Fantastic. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. We're just about at time. I hope that has been useful. We encourage you to share this information. As I said at the beginning, we have recorded this session and it will be available via YouTube if anybody wants to watch it back or thinks that they missed something, feel free to do that. Good luck with your applications and thank you very much for your time. And thanks again to our panel and for everybody who has contributed on both sides. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.